Hey everybody, it's Steve here, and happy holidays to everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy New Year, whatever you may celebrate. I hope you're all having a great holiday season. I certainly am. I'm having a pretty interesting one, despite all the craziness that's happening in the world. You can still find happiness if you look around even a little bit. So, with that said, I think it's high time I finally get to do something that I probably should have done a while ago, probably before my trip to Europe this summer. But technically, this would be my 5,000 subscriber special, even though we're past 7,500 subscribers at this point, which, first of all, I'm rather amazed that it's gotten to this point, like 75, I believe it's like nearly 7,800 subscribers. It's getting close to that as of this recording. That you all have followed, you guys have watched. Some videos have hit, some videos have missed, but overall, it's been a very interesting year, and it's really been a year of growth for this channel, which I really appreciate, and I definitely have a lot more coming in the future, don't get me wrong, and especially since, if you stick around to the end of this video, I have a very special announcement. You probably saw it on my community post or on my social media, like my Instagram and such, but I'll definitely elaborate further on it when we get towards the end of this video. But for this 5,000 subscriber special, which is way belated, I think it's high time I do the Q&A video that I mentioned a couple of times before. I finally want to get this one over and done with. I've gotten a few submissions, quite a few actually. Some really good ones, mostly stuff about my views on things related to trains and public transport. But it's definitely an interesting selection of questions, and I got some interesting answers for them, at least I think I do. So, with that said, let's get into the questions and the answers. And for those of you wondering what the background footage is going to be, I got some stuff of my model train running around my Christmas tree. And I also got some footage of Reading 2102 and some other nice stuff I've gotten recently in the recent snowstorm we've gotten around the Philadelphia area. So, hope you enjoy the stuff in the background, and hopefully you enjoy the questions and my special announcement. So, that said, let's get rolling. First off, we have Sean asking, when will the Avalia Liberties enter service? Oh, wait. Anyway, he also has a real question. What's your motivation for making thorough videos on SEPTA, Amtrak, and other topics? That's a really good one, and there's a lot of reasons ultimately, but I think the main ones would come down to there is good content out there about SEPTA, Amtrak, and other public transit topics, but a lot of them don't really go into the details that make it why it truly happened the way it did. You think of like the way I did my Acela video just recently. If you haven't seen it, check it out. But the main way I wanted to go into that was, why did the Acela and the Avalia Liberty program work out the way it did? Why did it play out the way it did there? Because there's a lot of underlying reasons to it all that I don't think a lot of people understand. And there's definitely good content out there that explains the more technical aspects of the Acela trains. You look at Amtrak Guy 365 and his videos about the Acela, both his old one and his new one. He does very good jobs on that, and that's all fantastic. But there's a deeper underlying story to it that I wanted to get out there, and also kind of see that kind of story as like the building blocks of what I would want to see for both for SEPTA and for Amtrak and for American public transit and passenger rail in general going into the future, because there's a lot of scattershot ideas that are out there for making these things better, but there really has to be something more comprehensive out there. There has to be something more all-encompassing, whether it be on a regional level, a state level, or even the national level, even though the national level is hard to really cobble together, and certainly will be for the next few years in any case. So it's good to have that sort of vision out there, and especially with the people I've been able to talk to, it's more plausible to kind of put it in their heads that, hey, you can't just like dance around the issues here. You can't just deal with symptoms. You have to actually treat the problem. And the problems go a lot deeper than surface level. And it's why I really love talking to people from the public transit sector, from the passenger rail sector, and also people involved in the politics of it all. And that kind of relates to the announcement that I have later on. And it really is exciting for me to really get into all this, because it means that you guys get to see a deeper story about what can be done to make public transport better. Because we need it to be better. We need it to actually be as good as it could possibly be if it's going to be a keystone of solving a lot of our problems. And that includes like a lot of things that go beyond public transit, because public transit has a lot of intangible benefits to it. Things like better housing, better job opportunities. So many things out there are tied to public transport. Better leisure activities too. Like let's be real here. Having been recently going to sporting events in South Philly, I would absolutely hate driving to South Philly. I'm a guy who actually likes driving, as sacrilegious as that may sound to some people, but I actually like driving. And I bloody hate driving around Philadelphia. I hate it, and I hate going to sports games driving in Philly. I'm taking the Broad Street line anytime I can go down there. And I can go down there most of the time, because the Broad Street line, yeah, it's not pretty, but it's reliable. But in any case, so yeah, long and short of it, my motivation really would be more that the videos are, I guess you could say, kind of a means to an end rather than an end in itself, because I want there to be a seed planted in people's minds that there can be better ways of doing it, and we are capable of it. And the way that, and to do that, we have to understand how we got here in the first place, what the actual underlying issues are, and how we can go about solving them. So I guess that's my motivation for the detail I go into. And that is not going to abate anytime soon as far as I'm concerned. So don't worry, that's not going to change. And I got a lot of things to yell about. Sean also has 2 more questions. It was in a separate post on my Discord server. Join the Discord server if you want. So the 2 ones are, will Amtrak reach their goal of doubling ridership by 2040? And will there be a golden age of transit, high-speed rail, and passenger rail in the 2030s? So my thought on the first one is that it highly depends on how the procurement of the new trains goes. Obviously, we're on the start of that with the Avelias for the Acela service. That, I think, can go pretty well. There's a lot of stuff they need to fix for those trains. But they are going to work to improve capacity and frequency, like not just like raw capacity, but also like how many trains you have available to run these services. Because one of the goals with the Acela 2 program was to get enough trains that they can increase frequency on the Acela service to half hourly at peak times. I don't know if they'd be able to do that. I have reason to suspect that may not be attainable. But it's definitely going to make it a better situation from a rolling stock standpoint to improve frequency. And frequency is one of the best ways to improve capacity and therefore improving ridership. Because the inevitable fact is Americans want trains. Americans want to ride trains. There just aren't enough of them. And that's what I think the Aero project is going to be absolutely pivotal. If it goes well, you could get close to seeing that ridership doubling by 2040. I think the figure that they hit this year is like 34 million trips. So you are really going to have to nail it with the Aero program, and also the long distance stuff, which Amtrak, I heard, took basically took back to the drawing board after a lot of builders were like, this won't work really, guys. Maybe try something different for a long distance setup. So you have that whole thing, and so ultimately rolling stock procurement is going to be pivotal, and also I think state DOTs buying up trackage, like what you're seeing in Virginia and New York State and New Jersey, a whole bunch of other places, Michigan too, and California. They are all buying up trackage. I'm going to make a whole video about this topic because this is one of those things that is going to be one of the most pivotal. You buy up the right-of-way so that trains can not have to worry about freight as much, that you take control over dispatching, and also that just generally that the trains are faster and more reliable, because like it's really kind of an under-regarded topic in transit circles when it really shouldn't be. It's really stupid that it isn't. But speed is important, and speed comes from reliability, and it comes from just not having conflicts with things. And that's definitely true with passenger rail. It's a whole topic I'll go into in the future, but if you want to read more into it, I highly recommend, I mentioned this in my Acela video, but I highly recommend Nolan Hicks's paper from NYU called Momentum. And there's a great section in it where he talks about why American transit planning is fundamentally off base when it comes to rail planning. And a minor spoiler, it largely has to do with the fact that when we're talking about public transit planning, we're putting rail services into the same category as bus services in terms of how we plan them. And that is frequency above everything else instead of speed, which for rail service, especially intercity rail service, that is the wrong way to think about it. So you have to think about speed. That has to be one of the big things. It's called trip time first planning, and it really must become paramount in American rail transit planning. Not so much for buses. For buses, the current way is perfectly fine with buses, but for trains, especially ones that aren't like light rail or trams, not so much. You have to think about trip time. And that said, will there be a golden age of transit, HSR, and passenger rail in the 2030s? Highly dependent on a few things going right. I don't see it as being like a golden age just yet. I think if it goes right in the 2030s, we'll see a golden age in the 2040s, like late 2030s, early 2040s. Especially like the one I think of the most often when I'm thinking of this question is California high-speed rail, because just recently California high-speed rail announced some major, and I mean major, design changes to California high-speed rail to get it done faster and cheaper. They improved the timeline by a year, even with the whole funding thing where the government tried to take the funding that was allocated to them away. Even with that, they're still looking to open it a year earlier than expected, the first section there. And it's all because the way that the line was designed was stupidly overbuilt. Like, this line was stupidly overbuilt for what it was supposed to be. And you're going to save a crap ton of money by just making it a bit simpler, because they designed the line for 250 mile an hour standard. The speed is 220 miles an hour max. That's a big difference when you really get down to it. Both like energy consumption, curve radii, that's a big thing. You really need to kick it down a notch there if you want to save money on that. And that's the big problem that California high-speed rail has had, is that it's been so expensive because it's so stupidly overbuilt. That's one of the big problems they have, and I gotta give props to them. So if that continues and you get the first true high-speed rail lines, you have Brightline West, you have California high-speed rail, you have upgrades to the Northeast Corridor, you have like major improvements to suburban networks, new regional networks, and I mean actual regional networks. You start to actually lay down the plans to develop those in the late 2020s, early 2030s for a lot of the grunt work to happen in the 2030s.
the 2040s, I think, are going to be a start of a new golden age of rail. Like, that could be the change of it. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen from a regulatory and framework standpoint, and that's something I absolutely want to talk about. But that I think, like the success of a project like Brightline West, like California High Speed Rail, that's going to be the starting gun, I think, to this new golden age. And I think it's going to go down as such. So long and short, I don't think 2030s. I think 2040s. That's going to be the time of the golden age, I think. So, but the 2030s are going to be the big stepping stones to that golden age. So keep fighting for it, folks. It's going to be a long fight, but we can fight for longer.
Next up, we got Joseph, who's got 3 questions for me. That was my limit in this Q&A. Do you like the Avelia Liberty's horn? Is the first one. I'm not the biggest horn aficionado out there. I'm not the biggest horn enjoyer, as some railfan YouTubers would say. But the Avelia definitely is unique. I can appreciate it for that, especially since you get to hear it more often than you would in Europe, because European trains don't blow their horns all that often, like barely at all. I think the only examples that they typically do is going over crossings that don't have active protection. That's no lights or bells, just a sign. And so it's rather rare to hear it, but you hear it quite a bit in the States there. So I can appreciate it for what it is. I do also appreciate that apparently, from what I've gathered, I mentioned this in my trip report video, that a lot of Amtrak maintenance personnel don't like the Avelia's horns because my working theory is that it sounds too much like the air horns that their watchmen use to warn them that a train's coming. So that's probably why there's, from what I understand, there's something of a push to replace the Avelia's horns with something more traditional in the American sense. So for those that like them, enjoy them while you can. And for those that don't like them, don't worry, there may be something better coming. I have no confirmation on either of those points, but we'll have to see. Next up, what are your thoughts on the new Lyndhurst station? I actually had to look up which station they were talking about there. It's Lyndhurst on New Jersey Transit, which just got a major renovation work. They got high-level platforms. The station reopened in June this year, which is pretty nice. And for those that don't know, it's on the NJT main line, which is the old Erie main line going up to Suffolk, New York, and eventually to Port Jervis. And was looking at some before and after pics before I started this, and to my eye, major improvement. Like, this is the kind of station that pretty much every station on a regional and suburban rail network in the U.S. needs to have. High-level platforms, level boarding. You need to have this sort of thing if you're going to... It's one of the subtle things that encourages public transit ridership, and I like that NJT is really trying to get going with this. Unlike my dear home agency SEPTA, which, minor spoiler, I have a video in the works about that very topic, and it's going to be a fun one. So, yeah, Lyndhurst, good improvement. I like to see that, and I want to see it happen system-wide in New Jersey. I want to see that system-wide across the Northeast and the U.S. in general. I know in the U.S. it's going to be tricky because there's conflicting standards, really, with particularly between trains with bi-level cars and trains with single-level or the multi-level design. So, there's definitely going to have to be some measure of standardization down the line, but a station like Lyndhurst is a good ballpark for a small suburban station to aspire to. I like it. And number 3, Venture or Amfleet? I cannot in good faith answer that question because I've never ridden the Ventures before. The closest Venture services to me would be all the way out in the Midwest. That'd be the Illinois services. So I can't in good faith give a definitive answer there, but from the videos and pictures I've seen of them, the Ventures look like, from an ambiance perspective, they look amazing when it comes to just how much light there is, how open and airy it feels. Like, that's important for the passenger experience. That is that looks really good, and it's like really modern, really really comfortable feeling. The main drawback, though, are the seats, which I've talked about a bit before in one of my other videos, but from what I've seen, the Venture seats are questionable when it comes to their comfort, especially compared to the Amfleet seats. I have reason to suspect that the seats on the newer Aero sets are going to be better, but it's not going to be like a full reclining armchair like on the Amfleets are. And I even mentioned this in my Avelia trip report video. The full recline function has its own problems that most train operators around the world are avoiding, and it's really not like the recline is not as much of a benefit as people like to think. And the main thing that I want to see is good seat padding, and just not have it be like sure, have some recline, but not have it be like stiff as an ironing board, one for the British out there. But also, like, you really can't sacrifice too much there when it comes to capacity, because Amtrak trains need capacity. That's the biggest problem Amtrak has right now. And right now, I think the Ventures are a good step towards it, but I'd have to wait and see. I'm gonna reserve judgment fully until I actually ride an Aero set or a Venture for the first time. And I don't know when that's gonna be. Maybe it'd be when the first Northeast Regionals come around with those cars, or someday I go out to Illinois or California, which would be great. But yeah, I'm gonna reserve judgment for that later. I still like the Amfleets though. I like the Amfleets because of their seats, but you can tell they're getting dated, and you can tell that just the way they were designed, they were made so that they felt like you're riding on an airplane, which, yeah, that was cool in the 1970s. It's not cool anymore, because air travel is not cool anymore. Simply put, air travel is not spectacular anymore. This isn't the days of Pan Am or TWA where you have 747s flying as luxury cruise ships flying at 500 miles an hour. You don't have that anymore. The Amfleets harken back to a time that's not cool anymore. And trains need to have their own selling points now. They can't just be planes on rails. They need to be their own thing. And I think the Ventures could be a good step towards that. But again, I'll have to wait and see. But I do like that they are apparently going to keep some of the Amfleets around. The whole scrapping rumor of the Amfleets is I hate to use the term fake news, but it's kind of fake news from everything I've seen. They're not actually scrapping them. They're looking to sell them off to hopefully other operators. And apparently, from what I hear, the state of Michigan wants to get a bunch of them for probably something like the A2TC service, which would be fantastic. For those that don't know, that's one going up between Detroit, Ann Arbor, Lansing, Traverse City, and Petoskey, Michigan. So that'd be really cool to see, like, those cars get used on that. So, yeah, like, I can't definitively answer it, but I have my preliminary thoughts. So, that said, let's move. All right, so June asks, favorite Amtrak livery phase? Well, for me, I kind of got, for me, the classic one will always be Phase 3. Phase 3 was kind of the livery I grew up with. The red, white, and blue stripes there. It looks really fitting for America's passenger railroad. Even to this day, it looks really good, especially when they wrapped one of the ACS 64s in that livery. I really, really liked it. So Phase 3 will always have a special place in my heart there. But also, I kind of had Phase 7 growing on me. Like, I know that's kind of a controversial take to some people, but I like Phase 7. Amtrak was kind of due for new liveries as new equipment was coming on there, and having one that was still based around stainless steel, which, as much as I love stainless steel, it's kind of an outdated aesthetic in so many ways. You needed to have something modern. You needed to have something stand out. You needed to have something that looked distinctive and really drew people's attention. And Phase 7, I think, does a pretty good job of that. So yeah, Phase 7 kind of winning it on for me, but I still love Phase 3. That one will always be a favorite of mine. Next up, we got the Hungry Transit Fan. Check out his channel, by the way. Two questions. What is your favorite sandwich, and what is your favorite transit line? So, both of those are hard questions to answer, honestly. For sandwiches, I have three main go-tos, I guess you could say, like ones that I'm always drawn to if they're an option. Hoagies and cheesesteaks, I kind of lump into the same category. Just the overall way that they're made is really, really good. Like I love cheesesteaks. I love good hoagies. Doesn't matter what's in them. Oftentimes, there's a lot of good stuff out there, especially where I'm from. I'm kind of spoiled living around Philadelphia in that sense. So that's one of them. Another one is basically anything that's like a chicken sandwich kind of thing. I know it's basic, but they're really, really good. But if I were to pick one, if it's on a menu, I will pick this almost immediately, and that's anything that's a pastrami sandwich. Like, pastrami sandwiches are really, really good. Kind of as a point of example of that, so I live in Media in Delaware County, and in Media there was a sandwich place. Sadly, the sandwich place I'm talking about closed up a couple of months ago, unfortunately. Really, really sad, because I love those guys. It was actually on Orange and State Street, right where the 101 trolley ends. So that's kind of makes it all the sadder for me that they closed up. But they made a phenomenal pastrami melt sandwich. It was pastrami, I think it was Swiss cheese, Russian dressing, and pickles, and oh my, and it was all on rye. It was so good. Like, I would get that most chances I got. Like, I would get something different just so I'm not predictable or anything, and also because the other stuff they made was really good. But like, pastrami sandwiches, yeah, that's a win for me. It really is. Regarding favorite transit line, that is really a hard one there. When it comes to thinking about the stuff I've ridden on, because I want to be fair to it, so I want to have some personal experience on it. I really don't think I can pick out a specific line as a favorite, but like, network wise, I love the DC Metro. I want to deeply love SEPTA Regional Rail because I know it so well. It's got a lot of problems, but I know it very well. I love what it's got, and I love what it can be. But probably looking a bit wider in scope, I would honestly look at the stuff I rode when I was in Copenhagen and Stockholm. Like, the Stockholm Metro, the tunnelbana, as they call it over there, it's a really good system. The trains are amazing, the stations are beautiful, and it's a really, really excellent system. I'm sure you talk to I'm sure you talk to Swedish transit fans, they can point out some issues they have with it, but the tunnelbana is definitely up there as like a really, really good system. And also, of course, I made a whole video about it, the Copenhagen S-Tog. The Copenhagen S-Tog system is phenomenal. That is what we in the US call regional rail. It's not really regional rail. I'll make a whole rant about that, how we have the incorrect definition of regional rail in the US, and I mean empirically incorrect. What we call regional rail, they would just call commuter trains, suburban trains, the S-Tog in this case. That's what the S-Tog is, and they run it brilliantly. And they're going to be going better when they go automated. I'm really curious to see how that plays out, but that has a lot of potential to make it even better. So the Copenhagen S-Tog, I would definitely rank pretty high amongst the systems I've ridden. Also the Berlin S-Bahn, because I rode the Berlin S-Bahn way back when I was a teenager, way back when I rode this, and that was a really cool system too. But Copenhagen, I mean, I didn't get much of a chance to really dive too deep into the Berlin S-Bahn when I was in Berlin, because I was only there for 2 days. But Copenhagen, that's now kind of my high water mark for what I want to see for a suburban rail system. That is a phenomenal system. I'm happy I had the chance to go out there, and I definitely want to go back. I definitely want to go back and see more of it, especially since I got a good friend who I can stay with. I'm sure you know from my video. So yeah, there's a lot of options I can pick here, but
just on like how they do things, how they like how they're future proofing themselves, and like just how it works for the people around it, I'm gonna have to pick Copenhagen on that one.
All right, next up we have Typically Bored, great name by the way, who asked 2 questions. One is, what discontinued Amtrak trains would you like to see revived? And the second, what rail lines do you think should never have been abandoned? Answer to both these questions, frankly, is most of them, because there was so much that was gotten rid of when Amtrak was created in 1971, and I get why it happened, but it never should have been in that position in the first place, where like you had to dump a bunch of services on day one of Amtrak's existence. If I were to pick 2 really good examples, I would pick both the original Floridian. I would never have gotten rid of that, because Chicago to Florida would be an amazing market, and it goes through cities like Louisville, Indianapolis, Nashville, Atlanta. It serves a lot of places that would kill to have this service again. Like the politicians, maybe in some cases, I'm looking right at Nashville, but the public definitely would benefit from it. It would be fantastic. And for one that's like a more daytime regional corridor, I would bring back the Hoosier State. The Hoosier State really should never have gotten rid of. And Chicago to Indianapolis is just such a bloody obvious one. And 3 times a week with the Cardinal just is insufficient. It is simply not enough. You need a daytime service to supplement it at the very least, let alone making the Cardinal daily. So aside from the obvious thing where most lines should not have been abandoned, except for the ones that were kind of surplus to requirement and were kind of weird, I think of some of the ones in the Midwest that got their own names despite them being more or less the same train. They should have all been lumped together in one service, kind of like what Amtrak does nowadays with services like the Lincoln service and the like. But most of them should have been kept around, but the Floridian and the Hoosier State are probably good examples of ones that really are no-brainers to keep in the present context. And who knows, maybe when the whole thing that requires the modern Floridian to exist it ends and it goes back to being the Capital Limited and the Silver Star again, which is what I hear is going to be the case in a couple of years' time with the East River Tunnel project. It could very well be that opens the door to the original Floridian coming back. And with the Corridor ID project looking at a line between Atlanta, Chattanooga, and Nashville, that'd be a great corridor service to add on to it as well. So you have a lot of opportunities to be had there with those routes particularly. And also, of course, bringing back the Hoosier State along that route too. So it's kind of a recurring theme. There's a lot of opportunity to be had here if state governments really took a closer look at it and realized, hey, not only does this work, but there are ways that we can easily make this happen while increasing the freight traffic that's so crucial on American railroads and maybe not annoying the Class 1s that much. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity to be had here. And kind of neatly goes to the whole rail lines that you think should never been abandoned. There's a lot of them that were, like, a lot of railroads in the U.S. were duplicates of other more efficient lines. Like they were kind of like weird routes that really didn't need to be built in a lot of cases, and it was just because railroads wanted to compete against each other. I put compete in air quotes on that one because most of them were just cartels, especially in the 1800s. But more to the point, there's 2 that I think of immediately. The first one, the obvious one really, is the Lackawanna Cutoff. I would never have gotten rid of the Lackawanna Cutoff, especially to serve as a passenger route to Scranton, Pennsylvania, and a lot of areas in the Poconos. It would have been a fantastic regional and intercity service, and it could have been a spearhead for retaining service in like northeastern Pennsylvania, southern New York, a lot of places that would stand to benefit from it today. And along those same lines, I would also never have gotten rid of the route between the old Reading Company line between Philadelphia and Allentown.
why that line is half gone and half of it's a freight spur, the other half of it is a rail trail. Why that line does not exist is ridiculous. You're talking about a route between Pennsylvania's biggest city, Philadelphia, and its now third biggest city, Allentown. And nowadays, if you wanted, like, if you had the equipment to just set up a passenger service between Philly and Allentown, you have to go the long way via Reading. And, like, if you have that as, like, its own thing, just going between, like, reviving the line beyond Lansdale and going all the way to Allentown, that would be a game changer, especially with modern equipment. That's one I definitely want to talk about in a future, like, master plan video, as I call it. I have a few master plan videos in the works, minor spoilers, of like what I would want to do for various regions when it comes to public transport and when it comes to rail. So it's largely to give a vision of what can be, because not many people talk about it. I do like what the governments in the Lehigh Valley have there. They have that line as one of the ones that they would want to build between Allentown and Philly, and connecting like a lot of lines to connecting Allentown, Reading, to like Harrisburg, New York City. You have a lot of opportunities there, and Lehigh Valley realizes that. That's fantastic. And to incorporate that as part of a wider idea for the whole state of Pennsylvania, that's one of the things that really needs to be done to show this is what is capable, what is possible. This is what we can do. So those two routes particularly, I would not get rid of in the first place. One of them is being revived. The Lackawanna Cutoff is coming back with NJT and Amtrak. But the Allentown to Philly one, still very much in the concept stage. So let's all hope on that one, because there is a ton of potential, and I love that some people realize it, but more people need to realize it. Let's make that happen.
All right, and next up we have Gil, who has 3 questions for me. First one is dream transit system to visit or ride. Second is, of Philly's historical and still functional trolley lines, which one should be brought back first? And third, thoughts on not just bikes and his doomer position of giving up on North America. Spicy question indeed there, Gil. Starting with the first one, dream transit system to visit or ride. If we're talking about a specific city, one I've really been kind of hankering for in one way. I mean, obviously systems like Tokyo are definitely up there. London can be really, really interesting too. But definitely one that I really want to see, and I don't see this one talked about enough, and it's amazing for a global city, is Paris. Like, as crazy as it may sound, I may want to go to France, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff that Paris has been doing lately. Of course, the Grand Paris Express, you're building essentially 3 new metro lines, and they're all driverless metros, so that's a really intriguing system. Of course, the Paris Metro has so much history to it, and it's so extensive. Paris has also been building a lot of new tramways, especially as ring routes around the outer edges of the city, and they look so cool. I really want to give that a try, and especially since like it could be a prime example of what trams actually can do, what trams are good for, and what we can take from that. Because like the Paris trams look amazing, the metro looks awesome, and of course the RER, which is their commuter network. Like the RER is one of those systems up there that is like lauded as like a gold standard of commuter rail, and to see it for myself, to really get a feel for what the Parisians have, that would be phenomenal. Plus France, for obvious reasons, the TGV. Of course, I'd love to go back to Denmark and Sweden again, see more of what they had there, because I don't think I got my fill the last time I was over there. I only had 2 weeks. More stuff in Germany I'd love to see, but if I were to pick one city particularly, it might well be Paris, because I definitely love the expansion that they're doing. I love the effort they're putting into it, and maybe it's that chance to maybe I become a Francophile from that. It really is impressive to see what Paris is doing. I'm sure it's not perfect by any stretch, and I'm sure any
anyone from the Ile-de-France that's watching this video, I don't know if there are, but they could definitely correct me if there's been some issues that Paris has been having. But from an American perspective, Paris definitely has a lot of good stuff going for it, and I'd love to check it out. Now, when it comes to Philly's historical trolley lines, by still functional, I'm guessing Gil means that it's a former system that can feasibly be brought back. Which one should be brought back first? My gut reaction is to say the 23, but I really don't know at this point. Like, the 23 is one of those ones that it's a fan favorite for obvious reasons. It goes all the way from the north of the city down to the south, and it was the longest tram line in the world for a long time, and now it's I believe it's Route 75 in Melbourne that has that distinction now. So when it comes to that, that's kind of the gut reaction there, but I don't know if it's going to be all that effective, especially compared to a bus. Obviously, the capacity of trams is one factor, but the main problem is the center city portion of it, where you have these narrow streets that you're going to have a hard time convincing people to turn into pedestrianized zones. If you were to convince them to turn into a pedestrianized part of the city, then it might work. But I'm a bit skeptical if that is going to be possible. There, honestly, though, the one that may well be one of the best candidates is one that kind of got screwed over recently, but there is still potential given where it runs through. And I think that would be the 56. I think the 56 from Nicetown up and along Erie Avenue and Torresdale Avenue up to Tacony, that could be a really good one to turn into a tram. It's a very busy bus route. The parts around Broad Street are getting a major renovation and renewal. They had to rip out what was left of the old trolley tracks and the old trolley stops that were there before to make that happen. But it's still one that I think could be a very good corridor for it, especially since it is a very busy bus route, and busy bus corridors are typically very good paths to follow when it comes to building out a rail mass transit system. And especially in the modern day, especially when you have a developed bus network like Philadelphia does, by that logic, that would mean the 47, which runs all the way from Whitman Plaza in the south up to all the way up to North Philly. It's the busiest bus route in the city, so that would be a very good one. I have seen a suggestion from Ed from the Joint Transit Association, really great channel, and he recommends extending the Market Frankford line down there. It was in his video where what if American public transit got the military's budget, and what could they do with it? And that was one of the things that was suggested. That could be an idea. I really don't know if that's going to be feasible. I'd love to see it, of course. But when it comes to trolleys, something maybe like the 56 could be a good candidate there. It could be a good start, especially for the parts of the city that could really stand to benefit from higher capacity and higher frequency transit options. I definitely think a trolley service would be really good there. And then we get to the spicy one of the three, and that has to do with not just bikes. For those unaware of what's being referred to here, Not Just Bikes is one of the biggest urbanist content creators on YouTube. Definitely an inspiration for a lot of people to get involved in the urbanist community. He has over 1 million subscribers. He lives in the Netherlands now. He was from Canada. He's lived around the world, and now he's lived in the Netherlands. He's now officially a Dutch citizen. And he definitely posts a lot about urbanist topics, and a lot of the videos are very good. Definitely pretty snarky. That's definitely Jason's style, is being incredibly snarky about just like how amazing the stuff is compared to how bad a lot of issues in the US are when it comes to urban planning. And to be fair, there are a lot of problems. What is meant by the doomerism of it all that Gil was asking about was, this was about 2 years ago at this point. Jason posted some
really really off the wall tweets. I think they were deleted recently. I'm not on Twitter, so that's why I don't really follow that stuff very closely, for my sanity, if nothing else. So Jason posted essentially that American urbanists should just give up. There is no hope. Dude, are you for real? Like, and honestly, his defense of all that is really weak. Honestly, it's that, it's essentially that car culture has well and truly won. There's nothing you can do. Blah 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 blah. Jason, you know a lot of your subscribers are from North America, right? They're the ones fighting for this, and you introduced them to urbanist concepts. So, and there's a good amount of people out there that want to see things better, myself included. And like, it was really kind of out of place, really, as when it comes to his audience, and he was rightly chewed out for it. He deleted the tweets eventually, and he really hasn't said much about, at least from the stuff I've seen, he hasn't really said much about like giving up on American urbanism lately. I think he may be too scared to say that now, but I can definitely see why he'd be apprehensive to say that, because that was a really tone deaf response to it all. And it's a big slap in the face to all the urbanists out there that are actually working to make their cities better and are succeeding too. There's definitely been some success stories out there. They may be small scale and they may not be revolutionary, but you need small things to happen to make the big things happen. And that's why when it comes to like the snarky urbanist content, it's why I definitely appreciate Alan Fisher more. Alan Fisher is definitely the one I credit the most for getting me into like urbanist content and such. Partly because he's local, but more than that, it's because like Jason, he's really able to articulate what these concepts are, what they mean, and just how they can be so effective for the places that they're in. But at the same time, as opposed to Jason, he's not a doomer. He is like maybe a bit too optimistic at times, but he's definitely optimistic. And that's what you need to be. You need to have that, or else nothing will happen. If I'm borrowing a quote from Avatar: The Last Airbender, I know that kind of ages me a bit. One from Uncle Iroh. If you look for the light, you may often find it, but if you look for the darkness, it will be everything you ever see. And to me, that's what Jason kind of fell victim to, especially since he's able to do it from an ocean away from where the issues are. He lives in the Netherlands now, and it's a place where they fought for the same issues they did that we are fighting for now in the US, and they won. They won in the Netherlands, and we are working at it in the US. We're not, we haven't, won out the way the Dutch have, but we are working towards it. More people than ever have realized that the way America has built its cities and built its transport systems is not working. It doesn't work financially, it doesn't work socially, it doesn't work for anybody, not even the people that work to keep it going. So I think the long and short of it, I still watch Not Just Bikes. I still want to see Jason's perspective on things. And he still makes good content. I'm not going to knock him for that. He still makes good stuff in my view. But at the same time, it's hard to really shake the fact that he took that doomerist stance. And but I want him, I think the thing I'll cap this off is, I want Jason to prove me and all of the people that were burned by him. I want him to prove us wrong. I really want him to do that. I want to see him acknowledge the fact that there are urbanist groups that are trying in the US. I really want him to see that. And I really want his audience to see that as well, because it's like having a bunch of doomers running around is useless in this current day and age. You need to have things to fight for. You need to have things to strive for. And there are groups that are willing to fight for it. And they need to be acknowledged. They need to be acknowledged in the US, they need to be acknowledged in Canada, they need to be acknowledged in Europe as well. There's still a lot of very car-centric places in Europe.
Adam Something is probably a good example, pointing out that stuff in the Czech Republic where he currently lives, and of course ranting about his old home country of Hungary, and of course about trains, because Adam loves trains. So long and short of it, I was disappointed in Jason on that one. I was definitely disappointed. I get why he thinks that way, but it was just because he let the lizard brain take over for a minute. So at some point, we are going to improve on that, and we will prove Jason wrong, and I want him to prove us wrong, that he sees America and sees North America as being completely doomed. Because, newsflash, it's not. It may be a bit rough now, but it's only rough now because we are fighting, and the ones that want to keep things in the status quo, they're fighting back. It's a struggle. It's not a rout. We're still fighting the good fight, like the Dutch did back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, that's my thoughts on Not Just Bikes. Still makes good stuff, though. I still definitely see his channel as a good welcome guide to the urbanist community. So, yeah, watch his stuff if you want to. Next up, we have one from one of my YouTube posts, and that is, how do you think various public transit systems in the US are going to handle the 2026 World Cup? Well, it definitely varies from city to city, I would say. Starting with my home city of Philadelphia, back when this comment was originally posted, back when I wanted to release this video back in the summer, Philly was not looking too good. But now with the temporary funding solution and new equipment coming in for the regional rail, I definitely think it's going to be in a better position, and it's going to be decent. It could handle the World Cup fairly decently, especially with the Broad Street line. There's a lot of capacity that the Broad Street line can take. So running the Sports Express service and kicking it up to 11, I think that can really help going between Center City and the stadiums. So Philly, I think, is in a good spot. For one that I do think is going to have a lot of problems is going to be Dallas-Fort Worth. And that's because of where the stadium is. Dallas-Fort Worth, the home of the Dallas Cowboys, is not in Dallas or in Fort Worth. It's in Arlington, Texas. Arlington, Texas, aka the largest city in America that has no bus service. None at all. 400,000 people live there. No buses. They only have microtransit and a commuter rail. That's about it. And it runs nowhere near the stadium. So unless the city of Arlington really gets a boot up their ass to instate a temporary bus shuttle service for the games that is happening at AT&T Stadium, yeah, Arlington is not going to be pretty. I don't think that one's going to play out too well. For cities that I do think are going to be pretty good on that front, I'm going to look at cities like Boston, Seattle, the Bay Area, LA to a lesser extent, and maybe Miami. Maybe. They're definitely going to handle it better, especially cities like Seattle with the light rail and the commuter services, and Boston because it's going to be in Foxborough and that's served by the MBTA commuter rail as well as buses. LA, SoFi Stadium, you're really going to have the bus service kicked up a notch to do it, but LA Metro's bus services are pretty good. Levi Stadium in the Bay Area in Santa Clara, that one could be questionable, but it's served by Caltrain, so it's got a frequent service to San Francisco. So that could end up being a saving grace. Kansas City, that one's going to suck because Arrowhead Stadium is in the middle of nowhere. There's like no public transit service. And yeah, that one's not going to be pretty. That's going to be in the same boat as Dallas. Atlanta could be decent. Mercedes-Benz Stadium could be a pretty good one. It's right in the heart of the city, pretty much. And you could get there on MARTA. So that's pretty decent. Toronto, you could probably get there pretty easily with the TTC and Go Transit. Is an exhibition place where they have that stadium. The ones in Mexico, I definitely have high hopes for, especially since Mexico has really been building out their transit pretty well. Miami maybe could be good. Hard Rock Stadium is in Miami Gardens. It's not in Miami exactly, so it's not easily served by the Miami Metro, but you could have buses run out there, and Miami's buses, from what I understand, are okay. So
And then you get to where the finals are apparently going to be held, and that's at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. It's the home of the New York Giants and the New York Jets. That one does have a big ace up its sleeve, and that is the Meadowlands line by New Jersey Transit. That is a game day service, and I've seen 12-car trains run on that line there. I think MetLife Stadium could actually be pretty decent, even if it's in the middle of suburban hell sprawl. It's easily accessible from New York City and other parts of New Jersey on that front. So MetLife Stadium may not be as a bad a spot as some people think, especially if people realize that the train is there. NJT, advertise the hell out of that service. Definitely do that. So so it could be better from a transit perspective than you might first think, but we'll see. Another one from my YouTube post. If the state of Pennsylvania were to get a sum of money tomorrow, say $50 million, how could they best deploy it to improve transit? Thanks for all the videos. Oh, thank you. This was made at the height of the transit budget crisis, so the situation has definitely changed. $50 million, that could definitely go into some good infrastructure projects, because the main thing that I see with Philly generally is that you need to actually invest in upgrading the permanent way, upgrading the actual infrastructure here. And $50 million could definitely do some good track renewal. It could definitely do some good switch replacements. It could do some decent stuff on the regional rail and on the subways. I definitely think it probably should go to the subways more than anything else, because especially ones like the Broad Street line, they definitely need some work done on that one. So $50 million probably go to improving service on the Broad Street line, improving speeds and such there, improving track maintenance and turnouts, things of that sort, or the regional rail. Either one of those would be pretty good. So yeah, that'd probably be my bet there, is to really go into upgrading what you got before you look to expansion generally, because it has a strong coverage. The whole SEPTA system does. It just needs to improve the strength of it. So that's what I would do. I would put it into infrastructure upgrades. Railroad Crossing fan here asking, what's your favorite Amtrak long distance route and also your favorite state supported route? Long distance route, I'm kind of biased towards the California Zephyr because I've ridden it a few times as a kid. It's a phenomenal route. It's really, really spectacular. There's a reason why it's kind of a tourist magnet in its own right, especially the route through Colorado is fantastic. I'm definitely biased towards that one, so I'd probably pick the California Zephyr. Second place, though, could be what used to be the Capital Limited, now the Floridian. That was actually the first Amtrak long-distance train I ever rode on, was the Capital Limited. That one is a really important one, DC to Chicago, and definitely deserves more love than it got before it became the Floridian. And once the Floridian situation ends and goes back to the Capital Limited, that one definitely, I think, should be one of the first to get new equipment whenever that comes along. Favorite state-supported route is an interesting question. If you count the Keystone service, it's probably the Keystone service. If you don't count the Keystone service, hard one to call. I'd probably go with either the Empire service or the Downeaster for very different reasons, but also very similar reasons. They're both really good services, and they serve really important corridors that, especially in the Downeaster's case, are kind of under-regarded, I think. The Empire service, of course, is very well regarded, so it's very well used, obviously. There's a lot of frequency there. The Downeaster, I think, deserves a lot more love than it gets, and it already gets a fair amount of love from the people that ride it. I think a lot of people realize how important the Downeaster really is to northern Massachusetts, southeastern Maine, and the tiny bit of New Hampshire that it goes through. It's probably like the one part of New Hampshire that may actually give a damn about Amtrak. So yeah, that's kind of my three. The Keystone service, Empire service, and Downeaster. But that's not to say I don't like any of them, and I definitely need to ride more of them. So yeah, I have them as my top three at the moment. I definitely would love to ride more, though. Next up on the list, we got Sammy Marco. Hey, Sammy. Definitely check out his channel, by the way. He's got some good stuff, particularly about the DC metro area. He's got two questions. One, one thing that SEPTA could do that would make the service better and attract more ridership? And two, if you had to move to another city in the U.S., which would it be? For the first one, there is a lot of things SEPTA could do that would make the service better and attract more riders. There's small things like the infrastructure projects they want to do. There's getting new trains, obviously. There's fixing bottlenecks on the rights of way that they have there, because that's a major constraint to capacity at the moment. But if I were to pick one that's really, I guess you could say, like, feasible in the short term, I guess you could think, that would be considering changes to the bus network. I know bus revolution is a thing that's technically still on the cards. I need to see how that would play out there, but I think one of the things that hurts SEPTA in terms of bus ridership is how indirect some routes are, and how a lot of them deviate purely to serve places that sure need transit, but isn't really the best use of resources to maximize transit use. Those routes should definitely still exist, but what I'm saying is possibly new bus lines with newer vehicles that run direct routes on major corridors and things of that sort. Kind of like what LA Metro has been doing. They really have worked to make their bus network direct. They work to make it really easy to work with as much as they possibly can. I was watching Miles in Transit's video about taking the stupid little bus systems that LA has got. But LA Metro really was the easiest one to work with in so many ways, because a lot of the routes are direct there. And SEPTA has a lot of routes that can be considered coverage routes out there. I'm definitely not saying get rid of them unless they have no ridership or something and they serve no purpose. But a lot of routes, there's a lot of corridors I could think of. There's a lot of corridors I could think of that either end way too soon and could serve some really decent ridership deserts and such, or you could take an existing route and make it a bit straighter to get more ridership out there. And I really think, I think bus revolution is going to be kind of a make or break moment on that front. We'll have to see what happens there, but because some people don't like it, some people do. I'd have to see how that goes there. When it comes to the rail side of things, the main thing is frequency. 10-minute headways on the Broad Street line is not acceptable. 7-minute headways on the Market Frankfurt line barely works. And the regional rail, you cannot run that hourly off-peak. It just does not work. It will not work. The only way you can make the latter happen, especially, but also true with the other two with the subways, is getting new trains. That's the only way I could see that working. And in regional rail's case, it's fixing bottlenecks on the network, because there are quite a few of them. But it really is a case of fixing what you got before you really look into major expansion. With one exception that I'll get to later there, because there is one that I think really would be valuable, and also it's one that I have a bit of a personal stake in. I'll get into that in a bit. But if you had to move to another city in the U.S., which would it be? Hard question, honestly. I've definitely grown kind of attached to Philly in a lot of ways, but cities like D.C., New York, Boston even, Chicago too, they could be very interesting, I think. If you want to go nuts, maybe somewhere like Seattle, but of course you got to deal with everything being expensive out there. But somewhere like Chicago could be a good one as well. But I like the Northeast. I typically stick around the Northeast, so maybe something like Boston or DC, if the opportunity arises. But for the time being, I definitely really like Philadelphia. So yeah, that could be an interesting query down the line. There's definitely some good stuff out there. I'm not discounting any other city, but we'll see what my thought process is there. I'll definitely visit some more of those cities I talk about in the coming years, though, for sure. And along the lines of the first question from Sammy, we have Gobi with 3 questions here. What is the most important Philly transit extension except for the Roosevelt Boulevard subway? 2, what bus routes would be the best routes to make BRT or even semi-BRT like in New York? And 3, what is the best transit city in the Rust Belt to you? That is all of Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Minnesota, Indiana, and Ohio, and west of Pennsylvania and New York. So the first one, I typically, as a rule of thumb, say that the extensions should come after the strengthening of the core of the transit network. Yeah, so that's definitely an interesting question to be had. Like once you have that strengthened, where to go next? I personally, this one's kind of an obvious one if you ever saw my first video, but regional rail from Wawa to Westchester should definitely be looked into. That's a minor spoiler for you. Another one, which I know they're working on, is the Paley-Thorndale line to Coatesville, because Coatesville has pretty big ridership potential, especially for having a town that big only served by Amtrak. You need to have a frequent service there to back it up going into the city. And if we're excluding the Market Frankford line extension to Roosevelt Boulevard to meet the prospective Roosevelt Boulevard subway, for something in the rapid transit side of things, maybe Patco to University City, but that's a big maybe to me. I really need to see if that's even going to be worth considering in future transit plans, and even if and really, if anything, I definitely should look into more if coordination between SEPTA and Patco really is on the cards before that happens. So it's kind of hard to really pick a lot of extensions because the main thing that needs to be focused on is the core of the network. It's really focusing on strengthening the core ridership regions so that the system is actually viable, and then you work on extension. That's not to say there's a lot of extensions that can't happen. I'll definitely talk about that in the future, but that's its whole other thing for another time. As for bus routes that would make the best routes to make BRT or even semi-BRT, I wouldn't say specifically specific bus routes. I would give that to specific bus corridors. And the obvious one to me would be on Westchester Pike between 69th Street and probably out to Newtown Square through Broomall. That road is a complete mess. There's at least 6 different bus routes that use that line there. And having a BRT route, one with a possible conversion to light rail in mind, so you can have the 104 become the old trolley to Westchester again, which I think really should happen in the distant future. That would be a great way to improve bus performance in the suburbs generally. And I would look at major corridors like Baltimore Pike, or even roads like Broad Street for major bus lane extensions to really work on bus stops there, because there's a lot of bus routes that serve those roads. And for something else besides Broad Street, obviously Erie Avenue is kind of the obvious one to me. There's a good amount of bus services that could definitely take advantage of that. And also Girard to a lesser extent, especially if you're having buses run in the trolley right of way as a regular thing, and not just the 15. The 15 should probably be light rail exclusively at some point. But aside from that, having bus routes run on major corridors and dedicated lanes, that would be a great way to improve the reliability of the buses and therefore spur ridership. So I think you should look more into corridors as opposed to specific routes. And as for best transit city in the Rust Belt, well, you made the cardinal mistake of including all of Illinois on that list, because the obvious answer is Chicago. It's not even a question. Second place, though, I'd probably go with Minneapolis on that one. Minneapolis is really giving it its all with its bus rapid transit and its light rail system. Obviously, the North Star commuter rail is dying as of next month. It's going to be gone and replaced by commuter buses. That one, though, was kind of the odd one out there, and since you didn't have it run in off-peak times and you didn't expand it to St. Cloud, you were kind of screwed from the beginning there, especially if you wanted to actually work on long-term improvements down the line there. At least in Minnesota's context. So Chicago's number 1, Minneapolis would be number 2, and for the states that are selected, number 3, either Pittsburgh or Cleveland. It's one of those two. I'm hard pressed to choose between them.
Maybe if I visit both of them, I could be swayed one way or the other, but for the time being, I'm going to call it a tie for third between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. So, yeah, that would be my picks.
Next, we have Fend, who says, do you think that, if at all possible, distance-based fares should be implemented on all non-Acela Northeast Corridor services? He says he personally does. My jury is still out on that one. Distance-based fares are a decent idea in a lot of ways. There's definitely different philosophies you could make with that, with the fare systems of any transit system, either demand-based or distance-based. Distance-based, I think, could make quite a bit of sense, especially on something like the Northeast Regional. That would definitely be pretty decent. But for me, my jury is still out on that one. I'll definitely research it further and make a video about it down the line there, because I definitely want to talk about fares for intercity travel and also for public transit in general. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that one. And next we have Tom with 3 questions. What is the best place for rail fanning, photography, and videography in the Philly metro area? Ooh, that's an interesting one. Which regional rail service should get the top priority for restoration? Among these, Norristown to Reading, Lansdale to Allenstown, Media to Westchester, Fox Chase to Newtown, Warminster to New Hope, and West Trenton to Newark, or something else. And 3, what's your opinion on the key card's failed ambitions to double serve as a debit card for those who don't have access to banking services? The first one, that's a really tricky one. I have a lot of favorite spots I go to, mostly along the NEC. That highly depends on what you want to get. For Amtrak, 30th Street Station is definitely a really good one. You get a lot of traffic going through there, and you got the Yard as well. And you can even get shots all the way down to the bridge over the Schuylkill, so that's a really good one too. For the Keystone Corridor, a lot of places could be good ones. One I've been going to a lot lately is stations like Devon or Paoli. There's definitely some good spots there. And also Thorndale as well. And Whitford. Whitford is a beautiful spot there. That old bridge looks amazing. For the Northeast Corridor, it's hard to go wrong with a lot of them. I go to Claymont pretty regularly, A, because it's close, and B, because you got fast traffic going through there. For freight, something along the CSX line, probably going through Delaware County would be a good place to consider. There's a lot of spots you can choose from. And for the north end of the Northeast Corridor, I would probably say either Bristol or somewhere around like Levittown or something, or also Morrisville as well. The Morrisville Bridge over the Delaware River, that's a beautiful spot to get. And you got some interesting freight traffic going through there through Morrisville itself. So it's definitely a healthy selection to choose from there. I'm not partial to any one. I just go with wherever looks really interesting. And there's a lot of interesting spots here. As for regional rail services getting top priority for restoration, I'm entirely biased on this one, I'll wholeheartedly admit, but the Media Wawa line to Westchester, that's one that is definitely one that I have a personal stake in, and now for more reasons than one. That would be really great, especially since Chester County is growing pretty substantially. But other than that one, which I'm personally biased to, I definitely love what I see with Norristown to Reading. The Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority has been doing a great job getting things going there for service to Pottstown and Reading and the like. That would be a fantastic actual regional route, not like the commuter kind of route. That'd be a great regional route there. It'd be fantastic to see. And if I'm to pick a third one, hard one to call with some of the options we got here. Lansdale to Allentown is probably the most feasible at this point. Because there's a commission that's actually looking into making that happen, and B, that should never have been ripped out in the first place, as I alluded to earlier. So those are my top 3 I would pick, and the first one's for pretty obvious and biased reasons, I'll say, but I'll explain more when we get to the end. And when it comes to the key card's failed ambitions to double serve as a debit card, that, from what I understand, was not SEPTA's own will. SEPTA did not push for that. That was the city of Philadelphia pushing for that one.
and the city kind of tacked that onto a card that was supposed to be a transit card exclusively, which in that context makes a bit more sense. I definitely appreciate the will to try that, but it just ended up backfiring horrendously. And it's the reason why your key card has an expiration date. No other transit card I have in my collection has an expiration date. Not my DC Metro Smart card, not my Patco Freedom card, even though that's going out of use, and not the New York City Omni card, and not even the one I used on the Stockholm Metro. They don't have that. Laudable goal. Horrendous execution, I'll say, especially since SEPTA didn't even want that to happen in the first place. So yeah, that's just sad. It's sad that it had to happen, but it just was poorly thought out, even though it was a laudable goal. From Average Foamer, what's your opinion on the Big Mac? And I had to check and see if he was talking about the SD70 Mac or the SD80 Mac. Then these are big freight locomotives. For those that don't know, these are big freight diesel locomotives in the US. And I had to check and see which one they were referring to. They were talking about the SD70 Mac. Good freight engines. Sadly, couldn't beat out the Gevos, because I'd love to see like actual competition between EMD and GE still, at least as a way of like keeping the locomotive market viable, because it really isn't in a lot of cases these days. Good freight engine. Metra, though, for commuter service, I still don't like it. Like, no, just why? I get Metra has an EMD fetish, but why? Just no. Harrison of the Front Range, probably know him from YouTube as well, asks me, do you think Amtrak should purchase EMUs for some of their Northeast Regional / Keystone service trains? Yes, with an asterisk. You need to do a lot to make EMUs viable here. And one of the big problems that I keep getting told by the people who work at Amtrak and such is that the big problem with EMUs, especially long EMUs that would be needed for an intercity service, is that if something is wrong on one axle, the entire train needs to be taken out of service there. And the reason why EMUs are so prevalent elsewhere in the world is because when train operators do put in big rolling stock orders, they order a lot more trains than we do in the US. The perfect example I think of straight off the top of the head is the original TGV, the LGV Sud S. When that line was opened in 1981, that's a nearly 300-mile corridor between Paris and Lyon. And just for that one line, do you want to guess how many trains they ordered? How many TGV sets they ordered for it? Wrong. It was 86. They ordered 86 train sets just for one service because they have to have spares. So if you're going to make EMUs work, the main thing I would do first and foremost is extend electrification first into Virginia particularly, and especially to not just Richmond, but also to Norfolk and Newport News as well. Virginia could actually be interested in doing that, so I'm holding out hope there. So you have that, but the main thing you would need to do is get in a situation where you need to buy a lot of train sets for the Northeast Regional services to make that viable. And ideally make them high-speed sets so they can run at the same speed as the Acellas, because this may be a controversial take, but it's empirically correct as far as I see. The speed difference between, the line speed difference between the Acela and the Northeast Regional should not exist. It's stupid. It causes way more problems than it's worth, and it just hampers the capacity of the Northeast Corridor to handle intercity services properly. You want to separate different services by comfort rather than by speed. You want the line speeds to be the same so you can more easily schedule timetables there. Sure, you can have different stopping patterns, and that's fine, but the line speed really is a big player on that front. And having trains that are 30-some miles an hour faster than other trains, other intercity trains, that really does not help the Northeast region, the Northeast corridor's capacity woes and its viability as a network. So you need to have some sort of homogenization in terms of performance to make that happen there. And you need to get a lot of trains to make that happen. So you need to be in a situation where investment is such that you need to get a good surplus of train sets to make that happen, so that if something is wrong with one set, another set can be easily sourced for the service. So I ultimately say yes, because EMUs are ultimately what you want. They are the fastest means of running a train. They're the most efficient means of running a passenger train. But there's a lot of things you need to do to make EMUs truly viable in the US, period, and even on the Northeast Corridor, where they are by far the most viable. So, yeah, ultimately, yes, with asterisks. Cryrig Games asking 3 of them. What's your thoughts on Amtrak's Rainbow era? What would happen if Conrail never split into CSX and NS? And the opinion on the Metroliner cab cars. Amtrak's Rainbow era, it looked really cool. It was really interesting to see a whole bunch of train cars from different railroads all mushed together into one train, and it was a really interesting time, but really it was only because of necessity. Ultimately, new locomotives and coaches were needed, so it was never going to be a long time thing, but it really was indicative of how much the industry had fallen in general by 1971, that you had to have these 20-plus-year-old locomotives at probably youngest, and the same age for the coaches, running in regular passenger service at that point. It just showed how much disinvestment had taken hold in the industry. But in terms of aesthetics, it was definitely a unique time. As for if Conrail never split into CSX or NS, that's really hard to say, because Conrail was hankering for a merger for years. They wanted to merge, particularly with Norfolk Southern. They really wanted to merge with them, even when they were nationalized, and even more so when they were privatized in 1987. They really wanted to merge with NS. So I guess what would happen if it didn't happen in 1999, it may have happened later. It may have happened as around the same time as like CPKC maybe would have done it. Just as riding off of that there, because you had this sort of disconnected network in the Northeast, and Conrail probably would have jumped on the bandwagon of wanting to merge with one of the other Class 1s there. So ultimately, yeah, I don't know who they would have ultimately merged with if it happened in the 2010s, but it probably would have happened in any case, because Conrail always wanted a merger, especially after the 1980s. And 3, the opinion on the Metroliner cab cars. They're interesting relics of a time when they were the future. They were seen as the future of American passenger rail. The refurbished ones are great. I like what they did with the refurbished ones, but the ones that are not refurbished, from everything I've been told about them, Amtrak doesn't want people riding in them. They don't want people riding in the unrefurbished Metroliner cab cars because they are falling apart. Fun example of that, I suspect it's an example of it anyway. Back in June, when I was out in Harrisburg for the Transit for All PA rally, I took a later train than a lot of people coming back, because I wanted to stay in Harrisburg, take some pictures, because me being me. And I took a later train coming back, and it was cab car first. It was a Keystone. It was cab car first. So I thought for a second, maybe I can sit in the cab car. And no, they blocked off the entire cab car on that trip. So I had to sit one car back there. And from what I've been told by friends within Amtrak, it seems likely that that was intentional, because the unrefurbished cab cars are not in the best nick. And I like what they're doing for the refurbishment, but ultimately they need the aero sets badly. They need the aero cab cars so badly at this point there. We only got a couple of years left before they start making their appearance, so hopefully a short-term thing, and hopefully at some point you get to ride in a refurbished cab car, because I like the Phase 7 paint scheme on them. They look really cool. And now the last question, and frankly I was saving this one for last because it's kind of a favorite of mine. From Butters That's Me 01 on YouTube.
A lot of talking points about public transit is planning for future growth of populations, but if the US as a whole started to decline in population for a variety of reasons, would that spell the end of public transit expansion, especially rail? Edit, keep up the good work. Thanks, Butters. So, I have a long answer and a short answer to this. Would it spell the end of public transit expansion, especially rail? My short answer, no. My long answer, no. And there's a variety of reasons as to why. For one thing, if current population projections persist, the US population is going to continue to climb until the late 2050s, early 2060s. So that means there is still going to be a significant demand for transportation generally. And what also should be mentioned particularly is that the whole idea of the population decline also insinuates another thing, and that's an aging population. And aging people are less and less capable of driving generally. And you've seen so many instances where elderly people are involved in car accidents because they've lost their touch, they've lost their ability to make meaningful reactions to situations on the road there. So a good public transit network is truly a lifesaver. And I've met a lot of older folks who take the bus because like they find it more relaxing and they're also less capable of driving. And as a personal example within my family, my late grandmother, she surrendered her driver's license when she was getting in her late 80s because she didn't really see the need to drive anymore, and she realized she wasn't capable of it. In fact, I actually have her car now, so it was passed on to me. So you have a nascent demand there from elderly people, and you also, on the opposite end of that scale, you have younger people who hate driving. Younger people are not getting their driver's licenses at the same rate that they were before. They don't like driving. They don't want anything to do with driving. So that is what's going to be driving another nascent demand for public transport services. Not even just like things like Uber and Lyft, and especially as like personal finances start to get squeezed here, public transit is going to fill an interesting niche because people won't be able to afford to take Uber and Lyft. Because let's be honest, Uber and Lyft are stupid expensive. So you have a couple of nascent demand markets there, and also just underlying demand in general for rail from everybody, particularly. A lot of Americans, when you talk to them about the passenger trains we lost, they so often opine that, yeah, it'd be great to have them back. They would use them. They would love to see it happen and to make them, and also to see them feasible in the modern world. It is certainly possible. And that's what I want to get out there, is that, yes, it is possible and people want it. So let's get on with it. So, yeah, like, I don't see the demand for rapid transit going away. The people want it too much. The people need it too much, especially the older people that are going to become more prominent out there, and the younger people that don't like driving. And there's a whole litany of other reasons as well. So I definitely think that rail is going to have a bright future, especially when new high-speed networks and improvements to current services come online, and rail really makes the step closer to the modern age that it really should have been this whole time. You see it in Europe, you see it in Asia, you're very likely to see it in the US when the snowball really gets rolling, and that snowball is getting bigger and bigger and bigger by the day. Someday it's going to be huge. So my short answer, no. Public transit expansion will not die with a declining population. If anything, it can galvanize it. But ultimately, that is a very good question, and that's the kind of questions I love to see. I love to see people thinking about these sorts of things, and I love talking about them. So it really gives me hope that the people that follow me really want to see this, and really want to look deeper into what needs to happen to make public transport succeed, and also why we're here in the first place. So thanks for that one, Butters. That one I think was my favorite question of all of them. All right, if you were able to sit down through all of that, I congratulate you. But here, I have to make a big announcement. And It was mentioned in a post on my channel's page, but I feel like I have to repeat it here just so more people understand what's going on. So, for those of you who are newer to my channel, the first video I ever released, I released it back in 2023. I've been working on it for months before then, though. It was about the loss of the SEPTA Westchester line, how it was cut back to Elwyn, and now it goes to Wawa, Pennsylvania, just outside Media, in the 1980s. And also talking with the tourist railroad that runs on the line currently. They were fantastic, and I still can't thank them enough to this day for letting me talk to them about the line and the current state of things, and also the efforts to get a passenger rail service back to Westchester again. And if, for those of you who do remember that video, probably check it out, even a couple of years later, and even though my editing techniques have gotten better since then, I like to think, I think it's still worth a watch, and a lot of people still seem to like it. But, so the group in charge of the effort to get a passenger rail service back to Westchester, that is by the borough of Westchester themselves, and particularly they have a committee under the borough council called the Rail Restoration Committee. Well, as fate would have it, I've been attending some of their meetings and was even considered to, and was even, of course, talking with everyone there, and some of the people there thought that, hey, there's some seats that are open in the coming year, and a couple of them are specifically meant for people who do not live in Westchester. I do not live in Westchester. And so I recently put in my application. I interviewed before the borough council. That was pretty cool, honestly. And I'm now a member of the Westchester Rail Restoration Committee. Yeah, I'm on a government committee now to restore a passenger train service, which, yeah, thinking like 2 years ago, that never would have crossed my mind, I don't think. But nowadays, that is a genuine thing that has happened. And in the new year, I'm going to be working on that effort. But what does this mean for the channel? Well, frankly, it means more stuff I get to learn that I get to share with you. Of course, limited in what I can say, of course, specifically, because obviously if you're talking about things that are happening behind closed doors, you have to keep it confidential. You can't really say all that much until you get the green light. So don't expect me to be a big squealer about everything. I'm going to be a bit tight-lipped about that specifically, but I'll be letting people know what happens when I can. And I also highly, highly, highly recommend people within the Westchester area or living along the present-day Media Wawa line or the old Westchester line to come out to the meetings. They are at the address here that is Westchester's Borough Council building, and they hold them on the second Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. So if you want an easy opportunity to see me and get involved with restoring a passenger rail service to your neck of the woods, well, there it is if you live in the Westchester area. So yeah, that's a fantastic opportunity there. And I want to see people out there, and I want to see people excited about this. I want to see it so that people are really engaged in this, because like getting the public on side, obviously, and the public definitely is, but making it visible to all of us, that would be a phenomenal way to really galvanize support for this project. So I'd love to see you out there, and I'd love to get started on this. As for the channel itself, I'm working on a few things lately, largely to speed up my content production, because I have a lot of things I want to talk about, and for the time being, it may lead to some slow release of content for the little bit, but that's going to pick up again as the year progresses. My next video is going to be the third and final video of the Acela series, and that's going to be my sit down with my friend Operator Logan, who helped to build the new Acela trains, and it's kind of a podcast kind of video. Real excited for that one. And then I got a fun little video coming hopefully in late January, early February-ish. And that one's going to be a fun one. I'll fill you in on that one down the line here. So yeah, it's very exciting times indeed here. And I'm real excited for what 2026 has to offer. 2026 is certainly going to be a chaotic year for most of us. But
we're gonna find ways to make the things we care about better in our own ways as well. We gotta keep up the effort, and hey, I've been given a golden opportunity here to help see that through. So I hope to see you all there in 2026, and I hope to see even in person there in 2026. And I have a lot more to say, a lot more videos to put out there. Don't think I'm going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, you're probably gonna see more of me. It's gonna be a lot of fun next year. So, in both a literal sense for the channel and a metaphorical sense for the topics I talk about, thank you all for watching. Thank you for tuning in, and let's make 2026 an even better year for how we get around.